my husband was completely oblivious to it now, to it at that time. Of course, now he's extremely well aware of my moods, but you know, at the time, because I had no mental illness history, and so no one was looking for that. And so then getting help, I decided to call my friend who was my OBGYN. She had delivered my daughter and knew me personally, and I had been calling her on and off that entire weekend. It must have been the sound of my voice or the hallucination picture, maybe. Something triggered her to call the hospital and say, you let my friend in, even though she's not saying she's suicidal, and don't let her out. and she worked in the hospital that I went to. And so I don't know what I would have done if I didn't have that kind of a friend to say, wait a second, something's really wrong here. Because I felt very hopeless at that time. And then while I was at the hospital, it really sort of took a turn for the worse for a while. I became paranoid. I feared the hospital was drugging me. I was so cognitively impaired that I couldn't logically comprehend what I was taking, and so that made me more anxious because as a supermom and a control freak, I want to know what's going on and what they're doing. And I actually went so far as to have my friend, the OBGYN, come meet the psychiatrist and sit in on the meeting, and I said, okay, should I believe what should I listen to him? Should I trust this man? And she said, go ahead and trust him, and after that I just went, all right, it can't get any worse than this, right? So I trusted him at that point. But the cognitive impairment was terrible. I wanted to shower one day, and all I could think of was how badly I wanted to take a shower, and I couldn't physically get my body to do it. I couldn't brush my teeth. I couldn't sit down and eat a meal. I was so anxious I couldn't do any of those things anymore. So I couldn't take care of my kids, definitely. I couldn't take care of myself. And I was convinced I'd gone crazy and that I would never recover, and that this was my life. Then sort of the hopelessness and the depression kind of hit. In the hospital. I would say not until the hospital. Maybe when I had time to actually sit down and think about what was happening. And then I did get depressed at that point. The recovery has been a long road. I would say I'm still there. I'm probably 90% recovered, but not 100%. I started off by going to cognitive behavioral therapy, and this was right after the hospital. And I went to this for a few days, and I was, so you need to be cognitive to go to cognitive behavioral therapy, and I wasn't real cognitive at the time, and I was actually found to be really over-medicated when I went and saw a psychiatrist out of the hospital, but I could barely function, and so I didn't get anything out of it, and I decided not to do it anymore. And I found that the clinic had a women's support group, and I thought that, give that a try, because I thought, well, maybe with women I can relate to them better, they're like me. And these women were your very chronic mental illness patients. They were not working, they were on disability, highly suicidal. And great bunch of people, but it almost made me feel more hopeless, thinking, oh my gosh, is this the new me? Is this the new Stacey? Because I don't like this. Should I just give up and accept that I'm mentally ill, or should I? And I went, no, I'm not going to accept that. I'm going to fight through this. I'm going to get through this. I don't want to live like this. And the best thing that happened to me is I finally found some postpartum support groups. And that was the first time, and this was probably 6 months postpartum, that I felt like there were women who had the same anxiety issues like me. Because all I heard about was depression. And my mom sent me Brooke Shields' book, and I read it, and I couldn't relate to it. It didn't feel the same to me. And then I did start individualized counseling, and I continue to go on a monthly basis just to, I say, be accountable for my actions. And mostly it's been learning not to take on too much, or kind of learning how to say no, or okay, the threshold's getting here. And so I'm working on those things. I'm still on anti-anxiety medication. We tried going off of it, and I was told I'll probably be on it until menopause, because something didn't go right. When I went off of it, I became suicidal. I was not myself. It was very scary. like so many wonderful women who are survivors who have gone through similar experiences to me. And that's been one of the greatest healing things, is to feel like you're not alone, that other people have gone through this and have come out of it okay. And then writing my story. I started writing my story in May of 2010, so my daughter was born in September that year. So pretty soon after this all happened. And writing my story first was a way for me to kind of get my emotions out. I went away for 3 days, sat in a hotel, and all I did was write. And it was a great way for me to learn more about what happened to me. And in fact, the book, where it ended up from where it began, is a totally different story. Because there were so many things that I didn't realize that were part of the story. And so I learned a lot, and it was a great process. And I'm honored to be here today and to be able to share my story. And what I would really like to see in the medical community is more awareness of it, postpartum anxiety and mood disorders, beyond your depressed mother, beyond your, the sleepy, sad mother, because I think perinatal mood disorders can come in so many different forms that we don't always recognize. And there's been a lot of publicity out there by celebrities about postpartum depression, and it's great, and we've had a lot more awareness. But there's that other end of the spectrum, too, that I think, unfortunately in my case, just kind of got missed and slipped through the cracks. And really, I feel in my situation, had there been some sort of mental health person or person trained enough to know about anxiety or mood disorders at my discharge from birth, that maybe we could have prevented some of the escalation. I mean, it was going to be there. I think there were the hormonal components that made it happen, but it could have maybe not escalated to the level it did, where I needed a 2-week hospitalization. That is my story. There's a lot more to it in the book. That was the very, very short, abbreviated version of it. There's so many details, it's hard to pick. Open to questions.
Do you feel, I guess looking at it from a, postpartum side of it, do you feel that, like antenatally, there could have been like education too surrounding some of this, like not just, because they do, I agree with you, they do talk a lot about postpartum depression and like signs and symptoms and what you should look for and everything. And just something I feel like I've kind of wondered about is if antenatally, like if there were some almost not support groups, but discussions and maybe education more about the anxiety piece that can happen even antenatally.
Is antenatal
like
when you're pregnant?
When you're pregnant.
Okay, just want to clarify
or
that.
like pre-pregnancy.
Pre-pregnant. Oh,
even,
absolutely.
And while you're pregnant, so like even some of your prenatal classes and those kind of things to talk about that.
I think any education is great. I mean, in the earlier you can catch these things and realize if you're a risk factor. And from what I've learned about it, the type A, the woman who takes it all on is a risk factor for anxiety, and other women that I've met tend to be very similar in personality to me. But yeah, because and I of course went through all those birthing classes and did all those things and never learned about postpartum anxiety. And really, my friend who's an OB didn't know about postpartum anxiety, and no one did. They saw what I had, and they didn't know what was wrong with me. Nobody really knew what was wrong with me. I didn't know what was wrong with me either. And so, it was one of those. It just didn't present itself in the classic way that people are trained to look for. And then the questions on the depression screenings were worded in a way that didn't resonate with what I had, and so I didn't feel like, oh, that's not me. I'm not depressed. It was so the opposite of depressed, because I was almost like on this euphoric high. Yes, I felt overwhelmed, but I also was like, go, 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 go. Like you're running a marathon and you're just trying to get through the finish line, and
not knowing what you're finishing.
and then hitting kind of the crash. Yeah. So.
I almost think the question sounds like they could make you feel anxious. Like, are you depressed? No.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it seems like you tried to share it like 4 times and you just kind of were minimized.
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh, I have 4 kids.
Right.
And you had a healthy birth.
Yeah.
It was quick.
Yeah.
Fine. What do you think nurses could do in the hospital to recognize it more, make people feel comfortable? I mean, sometimes I think we're afraid if we mention, we're suggesting that you might be like that, or you might have do you think it's good to be
Maybe
open?
just saying, are you anxious about going home? And then a nurse mentioned here too, how do you differentiate that from your normal anxious mom, especially a first-time mom? So there is a fine line, and I don't know, where that line crosses, because I think that would be very difficult.
Well, I think like the way that when you describe your situation, like when you were just like you're getting ready to go home and everything, the thing I feel like resonated with me was just that because it was your third baby and you were kind of telling people like I just can't go home, like that's the part to me that would just like almost trigger me to be like something's really wrong. Like she's telling us, and whether she can verbalize like what's going on or not, something in her is telling her something's not right.
We're too focused on the physical and uncomfortable with that psychosocial.
Yeah,
right.
I feel like for me when you were talking about that for me is what would make me kind of be like, she's like almost like a cry for help.
It was a cry for help. I mean, I must have pushed the help button.
Yeah.
I mean, I was pushing it, and it was in the middle of the night, and I'm like, I can't go home, kind of just panicking, and then telling the doctor. I mean, I was really telling everyone I can't go home, I can't go home, and I don't know if it's just the
well, I think that's
physical, like you said, you're looking for the physical.
Where we failed you because everybody was telling you it's okay that, well, I have 4 kids, and rather than listen and really get her story and what was it about that she was afraid to go home.
Yeah, no
just
one
listening
asked,
and getting more information sometimes helps figure out, okay, there's a little more going on here than just a mom who's a little anxious, and that if there was, even we were talking in the other group, the public health nurse that came out, Stacey shared that she hadn't slept at all. I think if that public health nurse would have picked that up and would have talked more about that,
like what's going on,
and then just being in somebody's home, you could see this type A person, and that put that together and see, okay, now there's some things going. So I was saying to Stacey, it's like we health professionals, we missed a lot of, you were telling us, and we were missing your cues.
Yeah.
And that.
But at the same time, there is also this denial too on my part. So like you tell and then you deny it. I think there's
the realization on your own part too, to like really self-reflect too. I'm sure you were having that struggle with yourself to be like, okay, I know something's wrong, but nothing's really wrong because I want to keep pushing forward and getting all this done and being okay. But I
think it's really courageous to share, because I think a lot of people feel this way, but they're afraid. Because we're so set up in America to be this super mom, and if you're anything less, you're not a good mother.
Yeah.
Plain and simple. And if you don't work and you don't have 3 children and you do it all, you're not enough.
But societally, I think that it sets people up for like a lot of expectation of themselves.
Oh, absolutely.